Kwe, Annie. Bonjour, hi. My name is Lila Cashew, and I'm Executive Director with Dohondo Gonson-Doje, the Network Environment for Indigenous Health Research. And we would like to begin this webinar by thanking our panelists who agreed to share with us and with you today the research work they do. We'd also like to thank all the people who are here in the audience and who share our interest in fueling discussions on promising practices that promote research environments by and for First Peoples. We are currently in Jojoge, unceded Ganyangaga territory, also historically visited by the Anishinaabe Nation. However, as our audience and panelists come from many places in the territory known today as Quebec and also in other territories, we invite you to share in the chat the Indigenous peoples who have shaped the land on which you find yourself today. And I'm going to pass off to Audrey.
Miigwech, Lila for this introduction, and just a little extra note. Donc c'est pour ceux qui ne voient pas le
So
globe.
for those who are not seeing this global at the bottom of the screen for translation, you just click on the three little dots at the end. It's called More, and then you'll be able to see interpretation.
So we welcome you to the series, Practical Examples of Research in Indigenous Context. As part of this series, we highlight research projects carried out entirely by Indigenous communities, organizations, and individuals. We also present research partnerships between academia and Indigenous communities or organizations, which is the case today. While we have one group of panelists today for this webinar, we are really glad to have more time to discuss and learn about this very important initiative that they will present today. So we are pleased to welcome Vicki Chartrand, a professor of Bishop University Department of Sociology, and Gladys Radek, representing Tears for Justice and a member of the Gitxagan-Wet'suwet'en Nation. They will present today on Earthing Justice's Partnership, which goal is to collaboratively organize, analyze, and mobilize Indigenous-led and Indigenous-based resources and support to address missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and other genders. So now what I'll do is I will leave the floor to our dear friends, Gladys and Vicki, but I think that Gladys, the mic is now yours.
Good morning. My name is Gladys Radek, and I'm speaking to you from the Tsimshian Territory, Northern British Columbia, Terrace, BC. And I'm an advocate for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. I've been in this movement since my niece, Tamara Lynn Chipman, disappeared from Prince Rupert, BC, September 21st, 2005. And she remains missing today. She was my brother's only daughter, and she left also behind a 2.5-year-old boy. And since then, I have been speaking for the families, particularly on the Highway of Tears. We put the name Highway of Tears on the map through doing our walks, Tears to Hope Society, or pardon me, Tears for Justice. We did our first walk in 2008, Walk for Justice. 2008, 9, 10, and 11. And what we were doing is we were walking in and throughout the country to not only raise awareness of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, but also to demand the national public inquiry, which did occur after 7 walks. And there was a need for the national public inquiry because that's exactly what the families were saying, because there was so many complex issues in regards to our women and girls when they go missing, and the vast majority of them end up unsolved murders. So that's where my movement started. It's in carrying the message for the families. And what I did through those walks was we also connected the families nationwide, and we brought the attention to a world level after the walks. because people all over the world started contacting me as well. I'm mentioned in several books from the States, from Paris, France. So we've gotten international support for our walk. So one of our main donators for our first walk was actually from Germany. And so this awareness that's what that's created for me, is the awareness. I didn't care about, I'm not in this movement for fame, glory, or fortune, because obviously I'm in the wrong business if that's the case. So what my job is to connect the families. And throughout our journeys, I realized how many of our family members who have actually, opposed to, feeling sorry for themselves because they've lost their loved ones, it's motivated them. It's motivated them to do the right thing by raising awareness, and also fighting for the issues that are creating this environment for us. And so our job as advocates is to connect with each other and to try and provide resources so that we can prevent this ongoing violence against women in all communities. Because we realize that even though my family member, one of my favorite family members, is way the heck in Nova Scotia, but we're connected now, and now we can pull all the resources in between, from Nova Scotia right through Newfoundland, all the provinces. We all have missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, every one of us. And again, the vast majority of those women and girls are unsolved murders. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to connect these families, because what we wanted to do was figure out the preventative measures. How do we work within our communities to prevent our women from going missing and being murdered? That starts with our youth. And right now, I'm with an organization called Tears to Hope Society, and I didn't stray too far from home because it's my sister's organization. And my sister, Lorna Brown, is my baby sister. And about shortly after I moved back home here to Terrace, she knew I was tired, because I've been doing a lot of work over the last 20 years, and I was very tired. I also had a heart attack in 2015. And so when I came back, I was still reeling from that, and I decided to move home so I could be with my family. Because all these years, I've left my family here in BC while I traveled and moved I was just like a gypsy for the last 20 years, moving everywhere to continue to raise that awareness. And I wanted to be where I could do so. And that's why I ended up moving to Gatineau, Quebec. I tried to move into Ottawa, but it was way too expensive to live there. And so I just figured, well, I'll live in Gatineau where nobody speaks English. So, but the thing is, everywhere I've gone, everywhere I've been, I've always connected with families. And to me, that's the most important thing, is meeting the families and seeing where they're at, and also to let them know that they're not alone, and that we can, when we band together, we come from a family that nobody wants to belong to. And that's by having a missing or murdered loved one. Nobody wants to belong to our family, but we're here. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. And we need to fight together in order to make positive changes in all of our communities. It's not just one community involved here. It's the whole country that's involved here. And all of us are working in our tiny little pockets for all these communities. And we're doing the best that we can to continue that awareness and to try and talk to our politicians and our MLAs and the whole 9 yards. They're just starting to listen now. I've been in this for 20 years and they are just starting to listen now. And the sooner we get Justin Trudeau out of there, I think we're going to be on a better road. So did I say too much?
You can go on. You can go on.
Okay. So the other thing that that we do as well with Tears to Hope Society is because we realize too that when our women go missing and were murdered, quite often they leave children behind, and nobody talks about those children. Nobody talks about my Jaden. Nobody talks about how Jaden right now, because of the loss of his mother, is turning out to be at 20 years old, a drunk and a drug user to mask that pain. There's no resources to help him get out of there. So he's got 3 things against him. And the number one thing that's against him is that he looks exactly like his mother. And that's a stigma that, you know, everybody always says that to him, you know. Oh, wow, do you ever look like your mom? Do you know, that hurts him. That hurts him. Because all he can do is think about, well, my mother's missing. So he masks that pain and he uses drugs, and he's violent when he's on drugs and alcohol. And up here in Terrace, people don't realize how many kids were affected by the loss of their mothers. And right now up here in Terrace, we're number 8 crime in the country. We're only a small community of 13,000. And we're number 8 highest crime in the country. There's still women and girls that are still going missing up here on the Highway of Tears. There's tons of them. And right now we've got two 13-year-olds and a 14-year-old that are missing. And we're talking about boys and men too in the past 5 years that have been going missing. This isn't, and I've always spoken for the men and boys as well, because I realize that Aboriginal people in general, if you've got dark skin, well, then you're a target. That's the consensus that I've come across since I started this movement. And there's a lot of things through the inquiry actually that didn't come through, in that we believe that the police are involved, and it's really been hard to prove it, because during the inquiry they did not interrogate any of the investigating officers. They put out to the public in both police inquiries, they put out the do-gooders. They put out the you know, the ones that are gonna go canoe with our youth and crap like that. You know, they didn't put any of the investigators like they did with the BC Women's Report. The inquiry, they scrutinized the police. I was there in that inquiry as well, and they scrutinized the police and came up with the recommendations for the BC Women's. The police at a national level were never ever questioned properly. So that leaves us with a problem that's not going to go away, because there's no accountability. There's no accountability on how the police are treating, even though we're still speaking about it today, about the police brutality. It's still not being addressed. And we know up here particularly, because people come to me with tips. I don't know why, but people come to me with tips. And a couple of years ago, I received a tip from somebody from the London area in Ontario. And basically these, they were redacted papers from one of our cases up here. It was and there was a whole bunch of redaction on it. But what I found was interesting was that when the inquiry, the national inquiry was announced, there was one RCMP officer, his name was Polson, who was the head honcho of the RCMP. And shortly after the inquiry was announced, he stepped down, he retired. And then they put the lady in charge. And I thought it was really interesting because it was about 6 months after that I received this email. And I realized that that very same officer, Polson, was the investigating officer for the Highway of Tears back in the 90s. And it made me wonder why he stepped down at that time, because he was in charge of the cases up here on the Highway of Tears. And I found it quite interesting that he would step down over something like this. And this is why, for me, again, I do believe that some of the RCMP are involved with some of our cases. Some of them are not giving information where they should be. And this problem is not going away anytime soon, I don't believe. I have been approached just this week about a young lady from this community who had to move out of this community because she was raped by RCMP officers. She reached out to me this week, and now I have to figure out how I'm going to help this young lady. She's afraid of the RCMP. I'm not. So I'm going to do what I can to try and help her. But the reason I tell you this is because this is an ongoing issue with Indigenous women and girls right across the country, where our young women and girls, and this girl was only 13, just to let you know, it's still going on. And as an advocate, it's been tough on me too, because people are reaching out to me. I'm trying to retire. I'm 68 years old. I'm going to be 69 in June. But the problem is not going away. So people ask me now, well, Gladys, when are you going to quit? Well, when I die, maybe, you know. My job as an advocate is to try and help the families. That's what my ultimate goal is. It isn't to get involved with organizations. I fight with the organizations. I do. Up here, I've been fighting with the organizations because they seem to think it's all about the money. Everything I've done has been by donation and volunteer. I don't get paid a high wage like the National Family Advisory Circle. I don't get any monies or anything from them. I continued as a volunteer for the families because they're the ones that mean the most to me out of all of this, is the families. And their stories, I've heard thousands of stories, literally. I have heard more stories than the inquiry did while we were walking. And each one of those stories are resonated in my heart and my soul. And that's why I continue to do what I do. Unfortunately, we've been losing a lot of family members in the past couple of years, especially. It's been really difficult because my family members are dying. And everyone that passes away, I lost 2 friends last week, just from the movement, and people you don't expect to go before you, and yet they're gone. So it's really difficult. It's a difficult road because when our families meet, like I said before, we come from a family that nobody wants to belong to. But when we do meet, we're families for life. The other thing that I do have happening is actually on Friday, I was approached by I'm just trying to look for this guy's name. The Minister of Indigenous Affairs, Gary Anandasangari. He's the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations Canada. And I was approached by them, by his office, because he told them that he wanted to meet me. So in this past week, I made arrangements with them. They'll be coming up here to Terrace, and we're going to be meeting them at the Missing and Murdered Women's totem pole that I envisioned. Oh shoot, I hope that's not my other meeting. It is too. Okay, so anyway, on Friday, what I did was I told them that I would be willing to meet them, so they're going to meet us at the totem pole, and then I told them that I was going to grab a bunch of grassroots women that are working in our community for this cause, and that we were going to meet them for breakfast on Friday morning. And I kind of feel sorry for them already, because I picked out the strongest. There's going to be 10 of us, strongest women in Terrace. They're going to be at that meeting. And I'm very, very excited about it, because he wants to help us try and bring the resources together that we need to start protecting our children in our community. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And that just came off the side of my desk. It was just crazy the way that happened, because I didn't, as of last week, I didn't even know I was going to be meeting with them. But now everybody's all excited in that, because they realize that that this is going to be an opportunity for us up here, particularly in Terrace, because we have no real connection to the federal level. We can barely keep our municipal levels together, let alone provincial. So quite often the Highway of Tears north of Prince George is ignored. So we don't get the resources. Even with my sister is on the governing body of the Highway of Tears, and they still have no voice there. There's 4 other family members that we know that are on that governing body, and basically they're dictated to. And there's crazy things that have been happening, like they were trying to change the name of the Highway of Tears. And I'm sitting there, and I opposed that right away. And that the day I found that out, there was a CBC reporter that was trying to get a hold of me as well to ask me how we felt about that. As soon as I found out, I phoned all the family members that I knew, and every one of them just swore at me and just said, no way. Well, they said no effing way, but they just said no, because they wanted to change it to the Highway of Hope. And every one of them said, where's the hope? We're still unsolved. We still got no resource. And so I was on the phone that day with the reporter from 9 o'clock that morning right through till 5 o'clock, and he kept on phoning me back. So what he was doing was he was going between me and Terry TG, ERRSA-Qc-NEIHR Family Services, who wanted to change the name, and without consulting with the families. And so we were going back and forth, and then by the end of the day, the reporter said, well, Gladys, he says we did it. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, the eRRSA-Qc-NEIHR have decided to put it on the back burner. I said, well, they may as well just put it right out. I said, because that's not going to happen. So it was a battle, right? Between Mary TG, eRRSA-Qc-NEIHR, and myself. And that's the thing is, that's the difference between her and me, is that she's in it for the fame and glory. She's gone out and she's done movies and she's done this, and Mary says this and Mary says that. She doesn't speak for our families though, because she doesn't speak to us. So that's where the Highway of Tears initiative is definitely not speaking for all the families, because they don't even talk to all the families. They only talk to a few of them around Prince George. So anyway, I do have to sign into my other meeting. So, what can I do? Vicki, are you going to take over?
Yeah, no problem, Gladys.
Okay, because I do have to get on that call. She's texting me, where are you? Where are you? So, okay, so, you will send me the recording then?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if there's any other questions, I do take phone calls as well. I prefer that to texting. So if there's any questions or anything from any of you, you can take down my numbers 250-922-5039. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. We'll talk soon. Phone me later, Vicki.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
It's always amazing to listen to Gladys. I always learn something new every single time. I actually have a cold, so losing my voice, and which reminds me that I should probably be talking less and just listening more to begin with. But first, like, thanks for having both Gladys and I. It's it's always nice that it's always great when people give us a platform to talk about the amazing work that people like Gladys is doing. And thank you everyone for coming today, for your energy and spirit. I'm sporting the bishop's logo behind me, but I'm on the Abenaki territory, and it's an honor and privilege for me to work and travel as an uninvited settler here. And I recognize that it's not just about acknowledging, but actually locating myself within my responsibilities to community and to the people and the lands of these territories. But I do want to give some sort of back context to some of the work I've been doing, that Gladys has been doing the work, and then some of the work we've been doing with Gladys is that. I'll give some history with Gladys, and then I first met Gladys. So she talked about she's done 5 national walks across Canada, and each walk lasts thousands of kilometers, and it lasts over 3 months. And her and volunteers, as she talked about, they walk from cities and communities and towns, just raising awareness and collecting the stories and images of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people. And I met Gladys on one of her national walks when I was in the central interior, British Columbia. I was working at a women's shelter, and that was the first time I met Gladys. And I eventually had gone to Ottawa, and I was at a Take Back the Night march on Parliament Hill, and who else did I see but Gladys Radek, who was there as well. And I'm like, man, this woman is amazing. Like, I really have to connect with her, So we connected, and I started to work with her on one of her walks, and we started doing a lot of work around, talking to dignitaries and fundraising and putting together all the images and pictures on her car of the missing women, which she calls her war pony. And so I was always amazed by the tremendous labor that goes into that she does. And as she talked about it, this labor goes unrecognized, unsupported, unresourced, unfinanced, and she's been doing that for years now. And so what we decided to do was, in doing that work, I started to you can't not recognize all the amazing work that's been happening across the country from coast to coast to coast, as an outpouring support for the missing and murdered. And so what we did was we did a cross-country road trip talking to Indigenous families and communities about this work that they had been doing. And so what we started to find was that, we often hear these kinds of Eve talks about it really well, about these discourses of damage, right? That communities are damaged, or that they need to be saved. And what you realize in doing this work was that, it's not just the communities aren't just passive victims or or damaged communities, but that they're actually doing some incredible, amazing work on their own time and their own resources without recognition or support. And so what we did, we started to collect and collate all these stories from coast to coast. And just to give you a small example, Gladys and I were driving in her war pony, talking to the families, and we will we go from city to city. And most people would look on her war pony in a kind of a voyeuristic way, and they'd maybe come up to us and ask us some questions. But every time we'd go into Indigenous communities, they'd come up to the car. Gladys would get out, they'd shake her hand, they'd thank her for all the amazing work she was doing. They'd point to some of the pictures on the car. They'd talk about some of their own experiences of losing loved ones. Some people would even know from the women on the car. Then they would offer free food, free lodging, free support. And what a difference in reception from Indigenous communities to settler communities, right? And it highlights, and I think that story highlights the vast discrepancies in terms of what we start to think about when we think about, Indigenous communities. And this is exactly what I think Gladys has been highlighting in her own work, but also in which she's been doing with the family members and all the work they've been doing as well. And to give you that example, how Gladys's work gets contextualized often is like raising awareness, and that's part of it. But on this trip, when you walk beside Gladys, and as a community engaged scholar, I think that's so vitally important. You walk beside Gladys and you see the work she does. She's not just raising awareness. She's a storyteller. She's connected. She's collected the names of already 4,200 women gone missing and murdered. And she goes from city and town, collecting the images and stories with the permission of the families. And she recounts those stories over and over. And she carries those stories in her heart. She's a storyteller and she connects families, right? That's an important resource. That's an important part of what it looks like to keep women and children safe, and men for that matter as well. And so that's where the idea of the Unearthing Justices project was inspired, was looking at the amazing work and outpouring of support and the magnitude of these Indigenous-led initiatives. So I'm just posting the link of the Unearthing Justices project. And so we collected over 500 Indigenous-led, Indigenous-based grassroots initiatives. And the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council has funded a partnership grant on the Race, Gender, Diversity grant to share and showcase these amazing resources. And we're going to highlight and showcase them on a website. And the idea behind this, and I think this is something that Gladys hinted to at as well, is to connect the amazing work that's been happening, is to connect the families from coast to coast to coast, and just so that they can share the amazing work that they've been doing. So it's been things like, ideas like healing and walks and journeys and patrols, coalitions and advocacy, literary activism. Like there's a whole host, and you can see on the website when you have a look at it, like a whole host of initiatives that are happening on behalf of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And one of the initiatives that I think that was really telling and highlighting, I mean, they're all amazing. Like some of these initiatives, there's a woman who offers safe passage to women who are walking, hitchhiking in Portage la Prairie. In Winnipeg, they have Nietzsche rides, so they offer free rides to women who are who need transportation. In the West Coast, they have Brother Fries, the Sisters in Spirit. They have Sister Watch, where it's wraparound services to make sure that women in the downtown East Side are safe. All across Canada, from coast to coast, they have Bear Clan patrols or Wolf Clan patrols and the like that actually don't police property or protect property, but they actually they support people, and they offer all kinds of supports within their own communities. So these are the kinds of outpourings of supports that are needed and necessary to keep Indigenous women and men and girls and children safe. And one of the I highlight in some of my own work is that highlighting some of this work, if you take, for example, in Winnipeg, Bernadette Smith, who had initiated Drag the Red. And it was an initiative that started after a young Indigenous woman's body was found in the Red River. And they had asked the police to drag the red to see if they could help families find closure. And the police said no, because they said it would be ineffective and too costly. And you think about our criminal legal system, I won't call it a justice system, I'll call it a criminal legal system, that if your job is to clear cases, it would be ineffective, dangerous, and costly. Right? Because your job is to clear cases. So policing has the mono function of just solving cases. So what Drag the Red did was it brought families and communities together. They pooled their resources. They learned how to safely drag the Red River because there's currents and the like. They built banners and provided lodging for families. They created an online toolkit for navigating the media and navigating the police when a loved one goes missing. They supported community. What they did was they kept hope alive. Now that's what actually justice looks like, right? That's what justice should look like, is bringing people together, bringing community together and supporting. And to be honest, I don't think they didn't find much when they did in terms of solving cases or finding additional, anything additional in the river. But what they did do was that they created community, and they created the community building. And I think that when we start thinking about justice, and this is what the idea of unearthing justice is that there's already amazing work happening in communities today. And that all we have to do is unearth them and see and see the amazing work that is happening in order for us. And we don't have to find, and while that's important, we don't have to go back to legal traditions, even though that is important. That's an important aspect of it. But there's already amazing work that's happening. And so we don't need to build and spin our wheels finding things that work. What we need to do is to put the resources behind the amazing work that's already happening, right? It's safe passage that keeps women safe. It's community that keeps women safe. One of the things that, and we've had, for the Unearthing Justice Project, we've had over 40 partners who've been helping us just work through the website and what would be important to share on this website. And some of the things you learn, it's such a tremendous amount about, not just about Indigenous communities, but what it is to be in community, what it is to care for each other. And I say her name with permission, but Chickadee Richard in Winnipeg, she talks about Shinanishinaabeg women. She talks about how every time a woman goes missing from their communities, it's not just a loved one that goes missing, but we also take away the strengths and the gifts that each woman brings to that community. Right? And when you start to think about people in that way, and when you start to think about people and communities in terms of their strengths and gifts, I think you can truly harness a lot more than simply solving cases and finding perps. Right? So that's the Unearthing Justice in a nutshell. I've probably forgot about a whole bunch of different things, but so we're planning to launch the website this year in just around September, October. And it's in partnership and collaboration with Indigenous-led and Indigenous-based partners and people doing that kind of work. So if you had any, and like I said, the email, the website's there on the Justice Exchange website. It's a research center here at Bishop's University that we advance collaborative and community-based approaches to justice. And so if you have any questions, I think the contact information is there if you want to get involved or if you want to support in some way. There's all kinds of support and resources that are needed.
I'm in a place right now where I don't even know what to add, or it's just there's so much things to think about. And I've taken so many notes, and I'm bringing this with me for the rest of the week, at least, if it's not more. It's just there's so much but that the resources is good, and if you if any of you had the chance to actually go on the website and click on the justice collection, then you can actually see all those initiatives that Vicki has been talking about. And they are divided according to the type of activity or resource or support. It's tremendous work, and I will definitely go through this. It's glad to hear you talk about it. It does give a different perspective on justice and criminal legal system. I'd like now to open the session for questions, comments, ideas, testimonies. So if anyone here today would like to ask a question or contribute to this discussion, please raise your hand or open your video, your camera.
And I could add that Gladys is also back with us for a little while too. So yeah, can ask the questions.
If you are more comfortable to ask the question in the chat, please do so. I understand that sometimes people are more comfortable asking the questions in the chat. They can also send me privately a question. Feel free to do so.
Yeah, hi, this is Julia Dubé from speaking from Geogiage, Montreal. I'm a white settler. I work for the Joyce Principal's Office, which is an organization created by the Atikamekw First Nation. Thank you for your presentations to both of you. Yeah, I want to acknowledge the strength, but also the, harshness of these testimonies. I'm curious to hear about if any of you two or both of you would like to share some strategies that you have to like cope when doing this work, because I understand that it's not it's not a work that you can turn off the switch when you're done your work shift, right? And then just like go on to your life, because this is life, and it's for now not gonna go away anytime soon. So what do you do to recharge when there's very limited opportunity to just disconnect, yeah, any strategies that you'd like to share with other workers working in similar areas of work and doing social justice work, or however you want to call it, work around resurgence, thank you.
Hi there. So, as you know, this work is very tough. It's been tough on our family since Tamara went missing. And there's no way before she went missing that I ever would have considered myself an activist. But after working for about 10 years through all the walks and everything, that's when I realized that, yeah, I am an activist, and an activist for justice. I say that very lightly because I've been, right from my birth, I've been institutionalized. I was born with tuberculosis. So I was institutionalized. I was ripped away from my mother. I was put into foster care. I was in a very abusive foster care as well. Started having sex when I was 8. And then the day before my 18th birthday, I lost my leg. I lost the use of my leg, and then I had chosen to have it amputated 4 years later. And so that kind of just slowed me down a bit, though. It just, you know, you could take my leg, it's a long ways from my heart. But when I lost the use of my leg, I was heading down a road of destruction. I was so angry over all the institutionalization that in my life and all the abuse and everything. So for a number of years, I was an alcoholic. I haven't had a drop since 2007. And I did dally with drugs, but I didn't like the idea of being out of control of my body and mind. So it was just a handful of times that I tried the hard drugs. Didn't like it, so I stuck to alcohol. And during that time, it was a very turbulent, violent time for me. Of course, you know, they say, you know, if you want to make an asshole, you add alcohol, right? And that's what happened. And so most of my life I'd been fighting. I was a real scrapper, even though I'm only 5'3", but I was very fast. So I was a really good scrapper, and that's how I made it through life, through scrapping. And I didn't need to go through the prostitution and that because I was a good pool player. So I made thousands of dollars playing pool with the best of them. And back then it was a really tough gig too, because women weren't supposed to play pool, but I was one of the best. So that's how I managed to survive through that life, was through playing pool and meeting friends in the pool circuit. So that's how I used to make my rent money. And these connections that we made after the fact, like I say with Tamara, is what made me realize when in 2007 was going to be my very first chiefs meeting per se. And up until that point in my life, I thought, well, you know, those chiefs, they're way up here and I'm way down here. I'm just a nobody, right? And everybody always used to say, oh, you're just at the bottom of the totem pole. Well, you know what? The bottom of the totem pole is the strongest part of that totem pole because we're carrying the rest of them. I was told that by a carver. So that made me feel better about myself. And now I say, well, you know what? You guys are getting pretty heavy on my back here, you know, but how do I deal with it? Well, I taught myself how to bead. I do my cultural, my button blankets. I'm an artist, and most of my art doesn't go to the public. Like everybody I know makes their beadwork and they sell it and they do this, that, and everything else. Me, I don't have the heart to sell it. What I do is I give most of it away. And I also give a lot of them to raise funds for other people. For example, right now I've got my youngest walker is my granddaughter. She was 2 when she walked with us across the country from Vancouver to Ottawa. She was 3 when she walked from Vancouver to Prince Rupert with us. And today she's graduating. She's 18. And today she is graduating this year. So this year, this is where my heart and soul is being poured into a button blanket for her for graduating. And also, I am also making all kinds of jewelry, red dresses and necklaces and earrings and everything for fundraisers for her. And so that's what I do to heal. I'm also a writer. I started a book about 30 years ago, and I've got about 10 chapters written now, but it's really heartfelt, and I know it's going to be a #1 seller. It's just a matter of finding the time between my activism and writing the book. So I'm also mentioned in, I also do interviews with people from all over the world. I'm in, I was just discussing this. I'll show you the books that I'm in. And these are also done internationally. So this one is The Other End of the Rainbow by Courtney Roy. And what this one here came from Paris, France. And what this is it's a photo journal book regarding the Highway of Tears. So this is one of the books that I collaborated with her. I'm also in Angela Sterrett's Unbroken. When she did this book, I phoned her after she published it, and I told her I didn't know that she was making me one of the main characters of her book. But that's, I guess, where her activism really began, was when she met me. The other one is Highway of Tears, Jessica McDermott. And this one here is How We Go Home, edited by Sarah Sinclair. And this book here is, they've got it in down in the States with Vows of Witness, it's called. And basically they're using this as a textbook. So it's an educational book to educate people about some of the movements between Canada and the States. And there's also another one I've got on order right now. It's called Obstruction of Justice. And Obstruction of Justice was done by a private investigator. His name was Ray Michalko. And unfortunately, 6 months after he published the book, he passed away from cancer. So, but him and I met a couple weeks after Tamara went missing, and we built a really good relationship. And I made the connections for him for his book, actually. So that's what I do in my spare time. And then see, the other thing that I do as well is I'm also involved with because I used to live in Vancouver. That was my home off and on for 50 years. And I know many of the activists in Vancouver, and I am also involved with the city of Vancouver. We have a coalition to address the MMIWG within the city of Vancouver. And we have a working relationship with them in how to build resources, buildings, healing centers, and what have you for the city of Vancouver. And right now I'm in the process of bringing our report that we worked on for 3 years. I've been given permission to bring that report to the city of Terrace so that we can start building a relationship also with our families up here. So that's just another coalition that I'm involved with. And the other coalition that actually my dear sister friend Penny Kerrigan and I have been talking about is bringing around a Aboriginal Mothers Center, because that's one of the other issues that we have up here, is that there's no place for our young mothers to go. A lot of them are getting pregnant and have nowhere to go and no resources and what have you. So Penny and I are trying to work on figuring out how we can open an Aboriginal Mothers Center. She founded the first one in Vancouver many years ago. And that Mother Center offers resources such as food, clothing. They offer life skill courses. They offer job placements. They offer counseling, elders. They offer everything to help a young mother get on her feet so that she can keep her children, because that's still an ongoing problem right now where the ministry is coming in trying to scoop our children. I rescued my grandniece just a couple of years ago, where birth alerts are illegal, but they'd used a birth alert on her just a couple of years ago. And because of that, I ended up shutting down that organization, the Métis Child and Family Services in Burnaby, because that's what they did to my niece. And as it turned out, I ended up getting the whole works of them fired over that, because it's not acceptable. But that's the kind of things that I do behind the scenes. Yeah.
Just a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
And what about you, Vicki?
Yeah, it really is more about like the families and communities. I mean, I spent the year, a year every night reading the not just the inquiry, but all the testimonies that the families did as part of like standing witness. And the level of hardship and violence that was experienced was, to me, like untenable in my mind. And so I can't possibly make it about me. How could I possibly make it about me after that, right? And Gladys knows, like, and I think that came up too. It's not a 9-to-5 job for. Gladys tells me this all the time, right? And it's like the families and communities, like Bernie Williams was saying, they're like mopping up the blood. They're dealing with like the real devastation.
Sorry, I have to go again. They're calling on me.
That's okay. I shared all your books in the chat.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And we'll talk soon, you guys, okay?
Yeah. See you. I hope this answers your question, Julia. I'm happy to see you here with us today. Gia works with the Bureau of the Choices Principle. So it's a very important work, and we're happy to have her with us and in other instances. So is there any other comments, questions, discussion, topics that you'd like to share with us today? Go ahead, Amy.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if you see me well in my new office. So Amy Spotelis, I'm working right now with a group of a network of family doctors. So it's a research network, family doctors, and it's the Réseau-1 Québec. And I think that what needs to be done more in health research is this work with Indigenous communities, but I think it can probably be fairly daunting for people who have never done this before, because we all know, like, you have to have that relationship and build the relationships, and we all know how much family doctors and medical professionals just don't have time to take that time to build those relationships. So I mean, I didn't know about your group, and I'd really like to look more into the group, because I think it's something that it's a nice connection that could be made with this network, which is all Quebec-wide network, and it's aimed at really helping the researchers build their capacities in terms of doing research that is going to have an impact on the healthcare system. And I think that's going to be even more helpful for those members, like our members, that would need maybe some of that capacity building in terms of being able to reach out to the Indigenous communities, especially in remote areas, etc. So I think that, I don't know if you guys have any just really wise words that I could share, or if it would be okay if I could reach out and start to build that partnership with you guys for our members.
Do I understand that this is addressed to us from the Quebec-NEIHR?
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, Vicki, I know fairly well. So, and I know Vicki from I used to be at Bishop's, and so that's kind of, I think, why I saw this webinar coming through my feed, and then I said, "Oh, that's neat," and then I found out about your network. So I think that's really, really interesting. I mean, what I learned from Vicki is that you have to build these partnerships, and you have to build the trust, and I think it's something that a lot of people have great intentions, but then can never go through with those intentions just because there's that fear or that barrier there in terms of, I want to help, but I don't know how to help, because it seems like it like a mountain to get over for somebody who doesn't have those connections, for example.
Well, first of all, please reach out. I would be glad to meet your group and learn more about it. And my research project right now is on cultural safety. So I've put together a table of different type of practices enhancing or hindering cultural safety of Indigenous patients and communities. And the wise word that I could say is, I understand that sometimes it's hard to build a relationship, but it's crucial. Because relationship at multiple levels have been heavily damaged by non-Indigenous systems, medical professionals, or governments. But taking the time is also just little, it's like little stones that you put on the wall little by little. And it's core in everything. We are a network because we are built on relationships, and we are as strong as our relationships. We do have a lot of projects. We do have a lot of areas that are time consuming, but we wouldn't be able to have such great opportunities like with Vicki today and her project that she shared with us, and Gladys, who I've learned so much. I've written so many notes, if we didn't put these little stones in the wall. But sometimes relationship is just with one person, right? It doesn't have, it depends on where you are, it depends of your practice, but it's one person at a time sometimes, and it matters so much. Would you like to add anything to this, Vicki? No, that's okay. So, do you have our email address, Amy, or would you like me to share it?
No, I think I found your website. I'm going to reach out definitely and see how we can facilitate that relationship building for some groups, because I think in more the groups that we have in more remote areas, also then keep into touch with, not even remote areas. I mean, a lot of people still think that Montreal is like, there's no Indigenous problems in Montreal,
40,000 Indigenous people.
Exactly. So there's a lot of education, and I think it would be great if we could work together, maybe even bring forward, some capacity building in terms of our members, our population. They know how to get through to these people in terms of whether it's your network, trying to find out, I want to work on something, but how and where to start. It's difficult, I think, but it's, like I said, good intentions are there, but sometimes that's the point of our research network, is to basically just help them. And even if it is not a researcher, but just a clinician who kind of wants to help out their local community by doing a small project. I think these grassroots things, just the example of your project, Vicki, and it started with a grassroots movement where you just sort of say, okay, I just want to help as much as I can, and I think it's very inspiring for a lot of people. So I love hearing about this project, and many times I'll hear about it. I love hearing about it.
One of the things for me, just to add to that, but is and it's not like, sometimes research is just important. That's all you need is communities just need some research on something. But for me, it's really important that I be invited in. I have to be invited. I can't be like, oh, I want to do this. And be like, if there's a space that opens up for me, then I'm invited to walk into that space. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that being invited and to break those barriers in terms of thinking that, medical professionals don't want to be invited. I think that they do want to be invited. It's just there's quite a big of a gap, as you said, Audrey, about so much damage has been done. Where do we start building those bridges? I think it's important.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting. I don't have an answer right now. But it's definitely food for thought. So anyway, please reach out. We'll be glad to meet you, and I will reach out to Vicki anyway again, because I feel like there's so much more we can do together. So anyways, I was glad to have both of you, Vicki and Gladys, with us today. Even though I felt like I was aware of the missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women and Two-Spirit and other genders movement in Canada, I still think I have so much to learn. So I'm glad that these resources have been shared with us so I can continue my learning journey in this matter. And I think that other people too feel the same today. It was a great learning opportunity. And it's just a start, right? It's a journey. It's not just a little stone in the wall. So anyways, it was glad to have also all the participants with us today, and I wish everyone a great day. I know a lot of you are busy, so thank you for taking this time to listen to our panelists. Yep. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. And I put in the chat, there's a link to, it's a very quick form. We love getting the comments, the feedback, and we share them too with the speakers, but it helps us continue doing what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.